it's supposed to feel.
What's good, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for another episode of our Madden 23 franchise with the Brooklyn Bulls. Of course, our draft-only franchise where we will be going through the stats and awards for this season, season number 3. Quincy Miles, 6,200 yards, 48 touchdowns to go along with 16 picks through the air. Also ran for 187 yards and 3 touchdowns this year. It was apparent early on in the year the upgrade that Quincy Miles was over a guy like Eli Palmer. I think early in the year he did have his struggles throwing the ball downfield, but we knew that was going to be the case. His weaknesses coming out of the draft were his deep ball accuracy and throwing to the pressure, and so we just knew that the deep ball wasn't going to be as consistent. But in the short to intermediate range, he showed us a consistency that we did not see with Eli Palmer, and that really raised both the floor and the ceiling of the offense this year. And obviously an upgrade at quarterback, the most important position in the sport, is going to lead to increased success of your team, which we saw as we got our first playoff berth this year. Went from not making the playoffs last year to being in the 1 seed race until week 18, and if the Raiders had just lost, towards the end of the season, we would have been the 1 seed, as we are riding a very hot win streak going into the playoffs. And that's because I think he even developed his deep ball by the end of the year. Even his deep ball was getting fairly consistent. And so you got to love Quincy Miles. Now, 6,200 yards, I think, is quite a lot, and maybe more than even I would like. And so in the future, I'd like to see maybe a little bit more running the ball, but I think that we saw, with his 16 turnovers, the fact that maybe we were a little bit too pass heavy going into that, just a little bit more. So I think the best version of this offense maybe won't result in 6,200 yards passing, maybe a little bit less yards. Will also result in a little bit less touchdowns. Just in our win streak, I felt like we started to be a little bit more well balanced, where in the beginning of the year, we were very, very pass heavy. I think also another part of the reason he had 6,200 yards was his simulated games. I felt like he was having just as many yards, if not more, in simulation than he was when we were playing with him. This offense is loaded at receiver. All 3 receivers that we employ on a regular basis are guys that I trust. One-on-one, they're getting the ball, sometimes even double covered, depending on how good the double coverage is. I'm sending these guys the ball. That's just the status of this offense. The draft has been very kind to us on the offensive side of the ball in terms of generating really good prospects. We've taken those prospects and we're seeing the fruits of those now in having, one of the best offenses in the league, and 6,200 yards. Spoiler alert, I don't think it should be much of a spoiler. That will lead the league in yards this year. And I'm very happy to have Quincy Miles in the fold. Flipping over to the run game, though, Rashad Grimes has nearly 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns, by far the most he's ever had. No fumbles. In terms of broken tackles, I challenged him to get 50 broken tackles this year. Instead, he turned out his lowest broken tackles ever. And so the fact that he was able to be, put in his best year, despite his worst break tackles, as you see, he's also not very much involved in the run game, just goes to prove how much of an improvement we showed in the pass game. And that just opened things up for Rashad Grimes in the run game. And the complaints I have with Rashad Grimes have been the same that I've had in the first 2 years of our franchise, that Rashad Grimes is a very decent running back. He will get what the offensive line blocks for him, and he'll fall forward after that. Every now and then he'll truck past the first defender, but it doesn't really result in a ton of extra yardage after contact. And if you followed us throughout this season, you know that there is a potential generational looking running back in this upcoming class. And not that our offense really needs it, but is somebody like Rashad Grimes, and of course his running mate Russell Lovelock, who we'll talk about in a minute, is the combination of those two enough for me to not draft this generational running back? It's tough to say. I honestly don't know. I like where our running game's at. I feel like it does the job that we ask it to in this pass-heavy offense, but you know, it's a generational running back, and also Rashad Grimes does not have very much interest in returning to the team. We're getting to the point in the franchise where a lot of these first-year players, we have to start thinking about their interest in re-signing. Rashad Grimes' interest in re-signing is low, and so the fact that we would have to overpay to retain him maybe pushes us towards him being replaced in the offseason if we have the chance to just draft that running back without having to trade up. Of course, we have the Green Bay Packers first instead of our own this year. We played them last episode, and they ended the season 6-11, so they'll have a pretty high pick, and I think there's a good chance that running back will be available with that pick. So do we take him? Do we ride with Rashad Grimes? I set a goal for 50 broken tackles this year. He didn't meet it, so I honestly think that keeps running back on the table, especially because with such a dominant passing game and with an offensive line that's really been developing quite nicely, I think we could take advantage of a special back and see seasons much like we saw with Kevon Simmons with the Express, both, you know, in the last couple of seasons of that franchise, as well as the 2 finale episodes that we released. I think a really good running back could have that similar type of impact, even though we know we don't run the ball as much as we did with the Express. I just think the efficiency could be off the charts because of how little we really ask of the run game to carry our offense. And so Rashad Grimes, no complaints. If we end up keeping him, I'm fine, but maybe looking to upgrade. And then the other person we would be upgrading over is Russell Lovelock, of course, the brother of Johnny Lovelock. Didn't have 100 carries, just under 500 yards, you know, similar efficiency to what we've seen in the past. And I think the fact that he's our receiving back and he's not really that involved in the pass game makes me more comfortable to maybe replace the 2 of these players with one generational back who isn't going to be very involved in the pass game. You know, very contrary to our Saints franchise, where I like to involve the running backs in our pass game quite a lot. We just have 3 great receivers and a great tight end that just make passing to the running back something that we very rarely need to do. And so having this, you know, receiving / elusive back role maybe isn't as important in this offense as I thought maybe it would be early on, until, you know, the game just kept generating these sick receivers for us to the point where, you know, receiving running back has very been devalued is what I'm trying to say in our scheme. And so Russell Lovelock, it's been fun having, you know, the Lovelock brothers on the team, but he also, I don't think, has very much interest in re-signing, and I'm not going to overpay for a guy who has kind of been the role that Russell Lovelock has been as a RB2, really, who a receiving back who doesn't catch the ball that much because we don't throw it to him that much. Not saying, like, when we do throw it to him, he makes the plays. It's not his ability that keeps us from throwing it to him. It's guys like Deacon Burgess that keep us from throwing to Russell Lovelock. Ends up with 12 less catches than last year, but 20 more yards, 1,900, and still 4 more touchdowns with 19. Deacon Burgess, man, he continues to impress year by year. And I think by the end of the year, like I was talking about with Quincy Miles, once the deep ball became more consistent with him, we really saw Deacon Burgess just show his true potential. He is unstoppable. No matter where we are on the field, there is the chance, as we see here, a 75-yard touchdown. There's a chance that it's going for 6. Deacon Burgess, the size, the speed, the route running, the hands, that he has no weakness. He even has, like, at this point in his career, as we've put so many playmaker upgrades into him, he has elite run after the catch ability. Maybe something I can look into adding to our playbook next year is there is a package where he lines up in the backfield, but he usually runs a route out of there. Maybe we could start handing him the ball a little bit. I don't know how he would feel about that with, durability and stuff like that, but having a 99 speed running back that has some, ability to make people miss could be really fun. I don't know. It wouldn't be something that we'd go to as often as you see like the 49ers go to it, but it could just be a fun little wrinkle we could add to season 4. I haven't done it yet. I'm not sure I will, but it's definitely on my mind. Just because any way I can get the ball into Deacon Burgess's hands it's a positive for our offense. Even with, this stellar stable of receiving options, like with the addition of Ray Coleman, as we see him lined up in the backfield on this play right here, made our receiving core just incredible. Everyone on the field that's out there running routes is a really good player. Yet even still, Deacon Burgess is as productive as he is, just because it is impossible to ignore him. He's always open. He's always open. And when he's not, you throw it his way and he's going to make the catch right here against Jeff Okudah. So, AJ Brown has that, 1K always open, but I think Deacon Burgess maybe has it even a little bit more. Easily the best player on this team, still, already has the gold shoes, almost a triple 99 already in terms of his ratings. So we're almost seeing like his final form. Not that there's much that he can improve on anyway, but honestly, at this rate, like, what's the only goal we can place for him? Like, get 2,000 yards. I mean, just, what was it, 40 more than he got this year, as he was really close. So expectations couldn't be higher for Deacon Burgess, yet we couldn't be more pleased. Like, he continues to find ways to get better. He's just, the consistency with which we were able to get him downfield this year was even higher. And yes, that's partly due to the quarterback change, but I also think it's just because Deacon Burgess continues to get better. Even though he's been 99 for a while, he is still, getting upgrades to other parts of his game. And, if I can find ways to keep getting him in the open field like this, where he's just, that 99 speed is going to take over, we could see even more electric plays. Ray Coleman came in as a rookie and had 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. Now, incredible for a rookie season, just regardless of anything. If that's an incredible rookie season for like a wide receiver 1, but he was our second receiver. But the thing that I liked most is that he proved that he can be this team's wide receiver 1. We had a game where Deacon Burgess was not available for the squad, and I mean, as hard as this is to say, because Deacon Burgess is so great, we just raved over him in this last highlight clip. Ray Coleman came in and the offense really didn't miss a beat, which is insane to say about a rookie receiver, somebody that was not on this team's radar to draft until the offseason episode. Well, really until I made the highlights in episode 4 last year, when I realized maybe we could use another playmaker. Found one that was really good in the draft. Glad that I was aggressive in trading up for this player, because I mean, you saw the stats. We got over 6,000 yards passing this year, and it was because we got another elite receiving threat in Ray Coleman. played even above his ratings, I would say, this year. And so as he continues to develop those ratings, he's going to just be insane. The fact that he is a wide receiver too was just kind of like a crime, honestly. And who knows? I mean, obviously it's way too early to start talking about this because he just played his rookie year, but there could come a point in time where he doesn't want to re-sign with this team because he is a wide receiver one and he wants to be treated as such in an offense. And maybe, the presence of a Deacon Burgess, insanely enough, since he had 1,300 yards and touchdowns, maybe he's capable of even more. I mean, I'm sure he is because a lot of these targets are going to Deacon Burgess. And like I said, his best game of the year was when Deacon Burgess was out and he was our wide receiver one. Stepped into that role seamlessly. So incredible player. And like I said, it's way too early because he is just coming off his rookie year, but I don't think his re-sign interest is going to be high for us. Honestly, just the majority of our offense, I think almost everybody on offense, except for maybe one or two offensive linemen, don't want to re-sign with us. So as awesome, as truly incredible as our offense was this year, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep it all together like we did with the Express. Johnny Lovelock was somebody that I thought maybe would have a little bit of a dip in his production, but no, still 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns, 73 receptions. This is the range that he's been in his entire career. So the fact that we were able to get somebody in the offense from like a Nathan Holloman 500 yards to a Ray Coleman 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns, and Johnny Lovelock didn't suffer in his production because of it, just is a perfect illustration of the improvement that this team made offensively this year and just the upgrade that we made at quarterback. There is no area of the field where we don't have multiple targets capable of making plays. And, Johnny Lovelock is really our short to intermediate range receiver. See this slant route here. A lot of those don't end up making the highlight reel because, slants aren't the sexiest play out there, but that's where he lives. Going over the middle of the field, makes plays consistently there, has very sure hands, and kind of like what I talked about last offseason, he's in the role that he's designed to play. Dan Steinbach had a Lewis Smart-like season with 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Earlier in the season, I had a subscriber ask if Dan Steinbach was the next Lewis Smart, and I said, I don't know about that. That's a high bar to ask him to cross, but I mean, 100 catches, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns, like, that's a season that we saw very often from Lewis Smart. Now, I think in terms of abilities, his after the catch isn't quite as good, although we'll see some good after the catch moments from this year. But this is a guy in simulation that consistently went off this year. Multiple games of double-digit catches with well over 100 yards to go with them. Like, those are numbers that I would have just salivated over for Lewis Smart in simulation. But Dan Steinbach, simulation god, apparently. And it's not like in the games that we played, he wasn't very productive. He was, as we're showing here with this highlight reel, winning on a lot of the same routes that we saw Lewis Smart winning consistently on. A lot of those deep outs, getting the catch and run ability of, the drags. And so honestly, even though I don't see him as the caliber of player of a Lewis Smart, I run a lot of similar plays for him that I saw that we ran with Lewis Smart because I do trust him to make the play in one-on-one situations. Our offensive line was pretty good this year. Our 2 tackles gave up a combined 13 sacks. Ramirez is still pretty high with 5 for center, but both of our guards gave up 4. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the performance of our offensive line. Switching to defense now, Caleb Richardson got a 5-sack improvement up to 18.5. I had opined after last season if an upgrade to superstar development would result in an increase in stats and just productivity in general from him. And they certainly did. Whereas last year, I thought like his 13.5 sacks were maybe a little bit higher than he deserved. This year, no, the man was a true 18.5 sack player. I think he really turned into a high impact edge rusher this year in our system. Why is a Dan Steinbeck catch in Caleb Von Richardson's zone? That's my bad. Just like these episodes are very hard to make, and they're very time consuming, and it just kind of tires the brain out. So you're gonna have to bear with me. There's gonna be a couple that are misplaced, and probably every one of these. But going back to Caleb Von Richardson, he is the high impact number one edge rusher. Played more true to his ratings this year, already in the 90s, which is kind of nuts. Awesome player. Somebody that I am confident can win. You know, when we're using him, we get a lot of wins, but I also don't feel like I need to user him to get production. Raheem McKinney is somebody that I was actually honestly pretty surprised with these numbers that this was his least productive year of his career. And honestly, when I went to make, you know, the highlight reel, there weren't as many for Raheem McKinney as we've seen in the past. But something I did notice, because it was surprising to me, I felt like Raheem McKinney was winning consistently. Something I noticed when I was making these highlight reels, and we'll get to them when we get to the defensive backs, I think he was getting a lot of pressures, something that Madden doesn't really do a good job of tracking, is pressures that were resulting in, you know, errant throws that still ended up being big plays for the defense, just maybe not for Raheem McKinney specifically. Sidney Watkins, 9 tackles for loss and 2.5 sacks in his rookie year. Not hyper productive, but I don't want to say I was disappointed in the production. I felt like Raheem McKinney won often enough. And when we drafted him, well, before the draft, really, I was talking about how much of an early impact player would he really be. He wouldn't really be, in his rookie year, an upgrade over what we already had with Jermaine Bryant. And I already forget the other guy's name, but I'm confident in his long-term upside. Cole Byers, on the other hand, had a big increase to his production. No sacks his rookie year, 3.5 this year, and then TFL's way up as well, plus 11. This is a guy, particularly over the back half of the year. I think our defense improved a tremendous amount over the course of this season, something that I was kind of hoping it would, and I think the development of a couple of players is really key to that. Number one being Cole Byers. For the back half of the year, he was a big impact in the run game, and I'm honestly not disappointed in the 3.5 sacks. That is not what we drafted him to be. When we drafted him, it was because we had a very, very porous run defense that anybody could run through, and we wanted a big guy with a ton of strength that could get in there, muck things up, and, you know, consistently keep running backs from getting extra yardage, and I think he's done just that. Kurt Banks, this was his least productive year, and I was also surprised, kind of like Raheem McKinney, with seeing this, as I didn't feel like I saw a drop off in Kurt Banks' production. And then going through the highlight reel, I think he had maybe a drop off in the big plays. I still think he was really consistent. Maybe he had more of a Michael Franklin type year, to throw it back to Express, where the big plays weren't as consistently there, but the dude put in the work, doesn't disappoint. You know what you're getting with Kurt Banks, and that's just really good linebacker play. So I'm not worried with the drop off in his stats going through the games. I felt like he still performed like he always does. So not disappointed at all. You know, hopefully that level of stats shouldn't be enough to like drop him to start or anything. He should be able to keep his superstar depth. I do believe he plays at that development quite well, and so, you know, somebody I'm very comfortable in being the leader in the middle of our defense. His new running mate this year, Jelani Graves, best name on the team, 124 tackles, 7 for loss, had a sack as well, no picks. He's somebody that, you know, when I was playing the games in the year, I was maybe slightly disappointed because, you know, I was like, oh, we got this shiny new 99 hit power player. But I think he did a lot of dirty work in between the tackles, ended up actually with more solo tackles than even Kurt Banks. That hit power, I believe, kept players from getting out of his grasp. Maybe didn't result in the massive hit stick forced fumbles that I think might become later, because we got to remember he started this season as a 66 overall middle linebacker. We drafted him as a 70 overall safety. Thought his skill set translated more to linebacker. Put him there, and so I'm actually quite pleased having gone through the tape, because he's the one making a lot of plays when there's a lot of traffic around and you don't really know sometimes playing the game live who made the tackle. Well, a lot of the times it was Jelani Graves sifting through, the muck, going in, making the tackle. I mentioned that our defense improved greatly throughout the year. I think Jelani Graves' development was maybe the second biggest reason for that. John Atkinson, 93 tackles, 3 for loss, 1 pick, 5 deflections, career low in deflections. I was very disappointed in John Atkinson this year. I just don't think he plays up to even his ratings. His ratings show that I think he should be like a solid corner 2. Honestly, I don't even think he's played like that. I think he's played like a very low end corner 2 this season. He just wasn't consistently making enough plays, as evidenced by his 5 deflections and just low interception total. He just doesn't make a lot of plays on the ball. When he is targeted, I feel like it results in a catch far more often than I would like. But not going to give up on him or anything quite yet. Clayton Godfrey, 3 TFLs, no sacks, 6 deflections. So actually 1 more than he's ever had. But honestly felt like that was maybe a little bit low. I was actually pleasantly surprised with Clayton Godfrey. I was kind of disappointed in year 2 for him. Year 3 I thought was better. Just wasn't like as ruthlessly attacked as much. I felt like in year 2, the middle of our defense was Swiss cheese, and a lot of it had to do with the safeties and Clayton Godfrey. I felt like when we were attacked over the middle, it was more of our safeties this year. Particularly Duron Foote, who doesn't even get highlights. I found 1 highlight of him all season, so you're not going to see a highlight reel of Duron Foote in this episode. So, like Clayton Godfrey, long-term starting corner, not slot corner, I should say, not willing to commit to it, but I think he might get it. Danny Goodrich, once again, with 5 picks, 15 deflections, a couple less than last year, and then 86 tackles, 1 more than his rookie campaign, 1 more for a loss. He is, a certified lockdown number 1 corner. Said it last year that over the back half of the year, he became that lockdown corner. He was it for the entirety of this year. Obviously needed a very big week 18 to kind of get the big play production that we saw there on his end stat sheet, as he only had two interceptions going to week 18, then had 3 and 2 for 6 that week. Massive week. But even without that, I was prepared. I kind of knew where his stats were, and I was prepared to still say, despite the decreased ball production, he was just as good. I ended up putting him on wide receiver 1s more this year. In Madden, you basically default to having your corner 1 play the right side of the field defensively, and then your corner 2 playing the left. As you see here, he was lined up on the left side of the field because that's where Jamar Chase was. If they had a high-end wide receiver 1, I put Danny Goodrich on them, because no matter what his matchup was, he came to play. I could not be more happy with Danny Goodrich. There was a lot of debate in the first couple of years where we picked Danny Goodrich over one of those quarterbacks. I think the emergence of Quincy Miles as being a franchise corner, and just him being, I think, one of the brightest young corner prospects in the league, if not the brightest, kind of puts a lot of those speculations as to whether we should have picked a quarterback that year to bed. I am very happy with both what we were able to do with quarterback the next year and with Danny Goodrich himself. Jesse Byers is the last player that we'll preview, as we're not giving, like I said, a highlight reel to his teammate. 5 deflections, 2 TFLs, a pick, forced fumble for Jesse Byers this year. Still wouldn't say I was like beyond happy, with his performance. I just think he was better, both in being just kind of more solid and in terms of making plays than Duron Foote. I honestly wouldn't mind replacing both safeties this offseason. There's a couple that I like in the draft. I just don't know if we can get both of them. So if we end up getting only one, like I imagine we will only be able to upgrade at safety once in the offseason this year, I believe Jesse Byers will be the one that will retain his starting job, and it'll be Deron Foote, who gets replaced. Can lay some big hits like we see there. And there you go. Miguel Matias goes 25 for 30 on the year for kicks. 8 for 12 from 50 plus. A lot of those misses just had to be the CPU kicking outside of his range. Kovacs, 50 yards per punt, net average. I'm quite pleased with that as well. And then we had the kickoff return for John Howard that went for 6. Didn't make a John Howard highlight reel, so we didn't get the highlight of it, but it was an awesome touchdown, of course. And that brings us to league-wide stats, where Quincy Miles, no surprise, led the NFL in passing by 600 yards. And then he was above third place by over 1,000 yards. So, like I said, maybe a little bit egregious there. Would like to maybe commit to the run more in future years, as I just believe our offense was better in the last few episodes. On our win streak, we were a little bit more well-balanced than we were in the beginning of the season. Only second in passing touchdowns, though. Jonathan Taylor with a Kevon Simmons type year that we got accustomed to seeing in the finale episodes there. So that's going to be a very competitive offensive player of the year between Jonathan Taylor and, Deacon Burgess. I think Jonathan Taylor might even have a better case for it. Deacon Burgess led the NFL in receiving yards by 300, also had the most touchdowns by 1, ends up being only like 6th or 7th in terms of catches. But to be first on both of those without being first in catches just is even more impressive. Tyler Linderbaum did not allow a sack. Played a whole season's worth of snaps at 1,100. Most sacks allowed was by Dean Matthews of the Dolphins and Tyler Smith of the Falcons. Defensively, Roquan Smith led the league in tackles. And it looks like Kayvon Richardson led the league in sacks. Rousseau did have more TFLs than him, so I think it could be a pretty tight Defensive Player of the Year race. But I would expect Kayvon Richardson to be right towards the top. Miguel Matias made the most field goals this year. Also attempted the most. In terms of percentage-wise, Evan McPherson was the best, missing just 1 all year. Punters, the 50 yards per punt that we saw from Kovacs, 49.9 in all reality, was top 10 in the league, so very happy with that. Just don't want to be towards the bottom of the league, and punting is really my only goal. We saw roughly 8 or so. I don't know. I'm not really counting those in terms of return touchdowns, and then 3 punt return touchdowns. Why is Stephon Diggs returning punts? Doesn't make much sense to me. Let's see where our team ranked in certain categories. Number 1 in total offensive yards by 700, almost 800 yards. Number 1 in passing, we already saw that. That was easy. The Ravens have some insane rushing stats here. We were still top 10 in the NFL in yards rushing. Led the league in points per game, second in passing touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. We were top 10. So I think I missed it the first time when I was actually recording this gameplay footage. But first downs, lead the league. Something that we do on a pretty consistent basis, even when we're bad. I don't know why that is. Defensively, 5th worst in the league, it looks like, roughly. Against the pass, 2nd worst in the league. Again, I think there was an improvement. We ended up 5th worst. I know a large portion throughout the year we were actually the worst. So I'd like to see, we ended up improving by the end of the year. I want to see if we can capitalize on that improvement. In terms of points allowed, we weren't anywhere close to the bottom of the league, though. Definitely more, even I guess, above average slightly. So allowing a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. It's not the best way to play defense, at least in terms of like how it is on the eyes and like watching it. But it's a successful way in terms of getting wins, which is at the end of the day all that really matters. 10 picks was not anywhere close to the top of the league. Third down, we were top 10. I'd love to be number 1 there if we can. We were number 1 in 4th down conversions. Didn't attempt close to the most in the league. But when we did, we were the most successful. The Seahawks went for it on fourth down a ton. With that out of the way, let's get to awards where Quincy Miles unsurprisingly wins MVP. Had the high interception total, but just the touchdowns and the yards were too much of a lead that he had over other people to overcome. In the AFC Offensive Player of the Year does go to Jonathan Taylor over Deacon Burgess. I think that is the correct choice. Greg Rousseau he had more, tackles and TFLs, wins it over Richardson. Owen Clemens wins Defensive Rookie of the Year. We didn't have anybody until 5th with Jelani Graves. That's unfortunate. Wait a minute. How was Quincy Miles the third best quarterback in the AFC? He's the MVP, you idiots. Whatever. 8th best running back for Grimes. Deacon Burgess best receiver. No surprise there. Raymond Coleman also makes the top 8. We had 4 receivers go for over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns plus this year. That's nuts, man. That is nuts. Of course, best linebacker goes to our boy. And then we also get best defensive back as well. So nice bit of awards there for the squad. And that's where we stand going into the Chiefs game. 13-4 on the regular season. Of course, we had a lot of good players that led us there. Who were your favorites? And what do you think our chances are against these Chiefs? That episode against Kansas City will be coming out soon. Our team's playoff debut. And I will see you then.